All right, we want to talk economic issues. The Biden administration continues to push Bidenomics as though it's a glowing success story. But that sunny outlook, frankly, is not resonating with working families across the country, and with good reason. In fact, according to polls last week, 58% of Americans disapprove of the president's handling of the economy. Well, and there's no reason why that would be any other way. The average American family is now spending over $700 more every single month just to break even as far as dollars spent for the value of those dollars compared to last year. And people are wondering, are we on the verge of more inflation? Are we on the verge of a recession? Will the economy get worse before it gets better? What should American households be doing right now to prepare for that? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Stephen Moore. He's a distinguished fellow in economics at the Heritage Foundation and a senior economist at FreedomWorks. Stephen, great to see you again. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
Well, listen, let's jump into all this economic stuff. The president is trying with everything he has to paint a rosy picture of Bidenomics, but working families aren't buying it, and for good reason. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you did a pretty good job summarizing the situation for most families. Very well done. You know, you've got inflation that's run at 16% since Biden came into presidency, and meanwhile, wages and salaries are up 13%. So that isn't a tough math calculation, right? That means that every month that goes by, virtually, Biden has made American families poor. And we estimate at the Heritage Foundation that that's by about $5,000 and lost real purchasing power by median income families. And incidentally, that's like a tax. Have you noticed Biden keeps saying, I haven't raised taxes on the middle class? But of course he has, because when you're losing, inflation is a tax. The other thing I would say is look at gas prices. I filled up in Virginia just this weekend. I paid $4.29 a gallon. That's a huge tax on American families.
Well, it really is. And Stephen, I tell you, your knowledge of this never ceases to astound me. I remember many meetings with you in the Conservative Opportunity Society and other places. And I mean, you're just spellbinding with your knowledge and your capacity to bring this down to understandable terms. But what you're just saying, I mean, the average American family is spending hundreds and hundreds, 700 plus more a month for goods and services. And as you describe it, that's like a tax. But how long is this sustainable? I mean, at what point does this crash the economy or lead us into recession or whatever the next step would be? How sustainable is this pathway?
Well, I never bet against the American economy because we have an incredibly resilient, economy. We have incredible businessmen. We have great leaders of American small businesses. I'm praying at night that we don't go into recession. I want America to do as well as it can. But I have a hard time, don't you, looking at a single policy that Biden has put in place that helps our economy. Now, let's not forget, when Joe Biden came into office, the economy was ready to boom. Remember, COVID was over. The last 6 months of the Trump administration, all of these businesses were reopening. People were going back to work. So we shouldn't be talking about a recession now. We should be talking about an economic boom for American families. And it just hasn't happened because, just as one example, in fact, I just talked to President Trump about this the other night. You know, when Trump left office, we were completely energy independent. We were actually exporting oil and gas. Now we have to depend on the Saudis. We have to depend on OPEC. We have to depend on Russia to get our energy. I mean, is that crazy?
It's totally crazy. And one of those policies that you refer to that's a horrible policy is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is just over a year old now. It's done anything but reduce inflation. In fact, it's not even about reducing inflation. It's all about green energy, as you mentioned that, which is just the opposite of real energy independence. It's just the whole thing. So how do we? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
You called it the Inflation Reduction Act. We should not use their terminology. That bill is really the Inflation Acceleration Act. It has made the economy work better. And you are 100% correct, sir, that this wasn't about reducing inflation. It wasn't about benefiting the American economy. It was about the left's obsession with this climate change stuff. And by the way, because thanks to the fires in Hawaii, thanks to the fires in Canada and California, they've erased any of the gains that they've made in terms of carbon. Do you know how much carbon has been emitted in the atmosphere because of the California and the Canada wildfires? Why don't they do something about that? Maybe better forest management rather than force us to give up our cars, our stoves, our gas stoves, our air conditioners. I mean, these people are pretty crazy in what they want to do to the American family.
Great point. Great point with the emissions coming from all these. Well, you know, the president brags about low employment, low unemployment, but there's so many industries out there that have open positions they just can't fill. Where's the disconnect?
I think that Americans fundamentally are nervous about what's happening. Look, Joe Biden has added over $6 trillion to the debt in just 2.5 years in office. Can you believe that? $6 trillion in debt. And the longer term forecast is for another $10 trillion in debt. Now, look, I work for Donald Trump. I think he did great things for the economy, but even he didn't cut spending enough. But we have a spending problem in Washington. We have a debt problem. We can't leave our children and grandchildren a $50 trillion debt. Did you know we're on the course for $50 trillion?
Unbelievable. Stephen, we've got about 30 seconds left. What advice do you give to the American people right now, American households? What should they do to prepare?
Out of the White House immediately, and let's get a real president, whether it's Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or a Republican who wants to rebuild American businesses, do what's best for the American country, and everything Biden has done has been negative. That man has to be evicted from the White House in November of 2024.
Thank you, Stephen Moore from the Heritage Foundation and FreedomWorks. I tell you, you are a genius with this. You break it down in understandable terms. Deeply, deeply grateful for you taking time out of your schedule to be with us this evening on Washington Watch. Thank you.
Right. You, my friend, anytime. I love the work you guys do at FRC.